Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
It's mostly because you are so kind to me, so forgiving, and so indulgent towards me that I can take you away from the main stories of the day every once in a while on Katta Clutter to talk about something which may not feature in Indian headlines at all. Or maybe it might be a tiny para someplace and we may just pass it in terms of our attention spans. So right now, when our attention is focused on the Taliban, on Afghanistan, is it new Taliban, bad Taliban? First of all, my opinion, Taliban are Taliban are Taliban. They'll be the way they've been unless we are proven wrong, which will be a big exceptional thing. So let's not even go there. So forget the Taliban for a moment, because at this point, Taliban are not carrying out massacres, not at this specific point. But there is Islamic terror, Islamist terror. We have to be careful. When religion is used for promoting terror or for carrying out terror activity, then it becomes Islamist terror. At this time, Islamist terror is raising its head again. Because the other thing that we know about international or global terrorism now is that where terrorists are located does not matter, because they need sanctuaries. For a long time, they were located in the AfPak region, or what the Americans call AfPak region, that is the border districts of Pakistan with Afghanistan. And in Afghanistan, then for a long time, they were in the Middle East, in the ISIS region, or what was called ISIL earlier, that is Islamic State of Iraq and Levant. And now a lot of them have shifted to Africa. And because you are so indulgent towards me that every now and then I'm able to talk about an issue in Africa. That's not a continent that we think about very much unless we are playing South Africa in cricket. It's not a continent which we bother about too much, which is a great tragedy, because Africa is the continent on the move right now. Africa will drive the future of the world. From everything, from population to wealth creation to agriculture to climate change, it is in Africa that the key to all these issues lies. Africa can be tomorrow's problem. Africa can also be tomorrow's problem solver. In fact, the world's problems can't be solved unless Africa keeps on doing better and better. So we all have a stake in Africa. And I must say that anytime I've talked about Africa, the last time I think it was about Boko Haram, Nigeria, etc., once also about Ethiopia and the big trouble in Ethiopia, I find that a lot of you watch it. So in one of those episodes of Cut the Clutter, I had made a passing reference to a tiny country called Burkina Faso. And because I like looking for little interesting incident, something here and there to keep your interest, I had said that we Indians only heard about Burkina Faso at one point in time when Narasimha Rao, P.V. Narasimha Rao, as Prime Minister, for some reason visited Burkina Faso, and in its capital Ouagadougou. See how it's spelled. In its capital, Ouagadougou, it's a French Francophone corruption of some tribal words. In Ouagadougou, he made an offer of peace to Kashmiris. And he spoke those 5 famous or infamous words. You can choose your adjective depending on which side of the debate you are on Kashmir. He spoke those 4 famous or infamous words. The sky is the limit. What was he talking about? He was not talking about Indo-Burkina Faso relations. He was talking about sky is the limit to the autonomy in Kashmir. And that is when Kashmir had gone through a very bad phase of terrorism and insurgency. And that is when Government of India was trying to hold a fresh election. Farooq Abdullah was in Delhi. He was making a demand saying that I can't go back to Kashmir empty-handed. Give me at least a fair election, a promise of autonomy. Cabinet was meeting in Delhi while Narasimha Rao was in Ouagadougou. Now there are lots of stories about why Narasimha Rao was at Ouagadougou. And one of those was that because he was so hassled about his situation by 1995, it had looked like his tenure was over because he had become greatly unpopular and he was doing all those desperate things like Hawala scam, etc., to trap all his rivals or likely rivals. And his main advisor at that point, the man who controlled his mind at that point, can you imagine a mind as sharp as Narasimha Rao's was controlled by a man called Chandraswamy, who was a tantric. So the belief was that Chandraswamy told me कि मैंने सारी दुनिया का नक्शा देखा है, right? And I have now focused on one part of the world, one corner of the world, or one place, God-forsaken place in the world, which nobody thinks about, which is has the most perfect vastu for you to make a peace initiative in Kashmir from. So for the first time and last time an Indian Prime Minister visits Burkina Faso, which was Narasimha Rao in 1995. So you can imagine the time at which this took place. Looks like that was 2nd to 4th November 1995. His 5 years was almost ending. That was a very crucial time for him. Also time when he was on a downslide. So from Ouagadougou, he made this peace offer to the Kashmiris saying, autonomy, you want autonomy? Sky is the limit. So that's how it came into our consciousness. So I thought I'll explain that to you, but that is not the reason we are talking about Ouagadougou and Burkina Faso today. That's because another major terror attack has taken place, has been carried out by Islamist terrorists in Burkina Faso, which until about 5 years back did not see Islamist terrorism. Burkina Faso is a country of about 2.1 crore people, 60% of whom are Muslims, about 25% are Christian, and about 15% are of indigenous faiths, indigenous tribal faiths. So until it has had a history of political instability, serial coups and jailing of leaders and then release of leaders and then sort of reinstalling of leaders. It's a very complicated history for a small country. It's a former French colony. But until 5 years back, it did not really have much Islamist terror. But it has interesting neighbors. If you look at Burkina Faso, it's a landlocked country in sort of North Africa, but on the western side of North Africa, which is the side that is leaning towards the Atlantic, in a region called the Sahel region. Now Sahel, which African languages means coast to coast, basically is the region just under Sahara, sub-Sahara, and stretching from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. East should be on this side. So from the Atlantic to the Indian Ocean. It's sort of a wide region, very arid, very dry, very backward, but is a hotbed of ISIS and Al-Qaeda activity. Many of these countries are former French colonies. In fact, in one of the neighbors of Burkina Faso, that is Mali, a big Al-Qaeda outburst had taken place some time back and the French had sent their military to put it down. Now, in Burkina Faso, in a border town called Gorgadji, Gorgadji, 80 people have been killed in one more terror attack, apparently carried out jointly by Al-Qaeda or AQIS, which is Al-Qaeda in Sahel, plus ISIS there. Those two organizations have carried out this attack in which 59 civilians got killed, 6 pro-government militiamen got killed and 15 military policemen got killed. So 80 killed at least and a very large number of people injured. Just a few weeks back, just about 2 weeks back, on 4th of August, again on a town on the Niger border with Burkina Faso, 30 people were killed, including 20 policemen and about 10 civilians. So and it's a small country of 2 crore people, so remember, it's a lot of people killed for a 2 crore people. On 3rd of June, again not long ago, all this is this year, in villages of Solhan and Tadrigat. So in another attack, not long ago, on 3rd of June this year, 132 people were killed, again by the same group, that is Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Sahel. And that was in a place in 2 villages called Solhan and Tadariat. That was 132 killed. Then 3rd May, month before that, another attack took place in a place called Kodial, where 30 people were killed. 30 people were killed. Now, all these attacks are generally being carried out along the borders of Burkina Faso, because as I told you, Burkina Faso is not a place, not a country where a lot of these groups are located. But these groups have strong presence in many of the countries bordering landlocked Burkina Faso. So if you look at the map of Africa, this part of Africa, and where Burkina Faso is located, you will find Mali on the northwest, that is towards the Atlantic. You will find Niger to the northeast. So these are the two major countries on the north. Then there is Benin on the southeast, there is Ivory Coast on the southwest, and then there are two larger countries, that is Togo and Ghana to the south. Of these countries, only I'd say Togo, Ghana and Ivory Coast and little bit of Benin, they have some coastline on the Atlantic. All the others don't. And these are other countries, landlocked countries, that happen to be very poor as well. And that is where now Al-Qaeda and ISIS today are hiding and operating, because that is where they do not face the kind of challenge that they might face today in the Middle East, or they've been facing in the AFPAC region. So Sahel region in Africa, as it's called, is a region of concern for the whole world, because this is the latest sanctuary for Islamist terror organization. Now I thought I'll tell you for a couple of minutes about politics of Burkina Faso, but it's much too complicated. It will need a whole katta clutter by itself, except that, as I told you, it has a history of serial coups and serial violent changes of government. When Narasimha Rao went there, then its leader was Blaise Compaoré. Then he was overthrown, then somebody else came in and somebody else came in. The current leader is Roch-Marc Christian Kabore, who after this latest incident declared a 3-day mourning and the lowering of the flags all over Burkina Faso. 80 people killed in a small country like that is a big loss. Now, why Burkina Faso, you might ask me? So if I look at my old stamp albums, in times when people like me were young, we used to collect stamps. I don't think anybody does that anymore, because now email requires no stamps anyway. So there used to be a great hankering of stamps from rare countries, from where you could not usually get stamps or which you knew nothing about. So you went here and there exchanging, look for stamps of these rare distant countries. So one of those countries was Upper Volta. Now, under the French, this country, Burkina Faso, was called Upper Volta. Why? Because it's in the upper ranges of the Volta River in Africa. Several years after the French left, one of its leaders renamed it Burkina Faso. That's a local language. And because it's a country with a very diverse population, multiple tribes who have a history of warring, not agreeing with each other, here to build a nation around that diversity. So this name was drawn from the leading language, from the languages of two leading tribes, that is Mossi and Diola. So Burkina is a word from Mossi, which means upright, and Faso is a word from Douala, which means fatherland. So upright fatherland, right? That is how the name Burkina Faso came in. Now the world has been worrying about Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Africa for some time, and Boko Haram is only one of its manifestations, because in many of these places it's very difficult, say for CIA, the American forces, for the others to go and find these people. And the French also have limitations in terms of how much reach they might have and how much they might be able to do, and governments in these countries tend to be weak and unstable, and that is the kind of environment in which Al-Qaeda and ISIS grow. Because just as in bad unhygienic conditions or bad medical care, germs fester, just like that terrorists also need poorly governed or ungoverned places to fester. That's the reason they came up in the previous Afghanistan under Taliban rule. That is what's happening in Africa, and the whole world is worried about it. So first of all, an organization has come up. It's like an offshoot of Al-Qaeda called Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb. Maghreb is West. So AQIM. AQIM then merged with another terrorist organization there called Al-Murabiton. These two were based in Mali, which is also an old Francophone French colony. In Mali, they again merged with other splinter organizations of the same type, and then they set up one umbrella organization called Jamaat Nusrat al-Islam wal Muslimin. So that is the umbrella organization. You will also hear very often another expression, which is Islamic State of Greater Sahel, ISGS. As I told you, this is the Sahel region. So this is a region of concern, and this is what the whole world is worried about. And that is the reason even an incident in a country that we know nothing about, that we unfortunately care nothing about. The fact is that when Narasimha Rao went there in 1995, maybe for reasons of Vastu and astrology, he also inaugurated an Indian embassy there. It seems that embassy shut down in 2002. So we've lost interest in the region. I don't think when will the next prime ministers, some next prime ministers, Vastu advisor or Tantric advisor will tell him and her to go and make some important announcement from a place like Ouagadougou. But we have to remember that great problems of the world come from distant places that we care to think not so much about. Having said that, I'll finish this section and I will answer many of you who've been asking me why I haven't spoken about cricket as well. That is the victory in Lords. And I will tell you, first of all, I'm superstitious. Second, it's only the second test of a 5-test series and we are 1-0 up. There are 3 more to go. I'm superstitious because 2014, exactly the same thing had happened, what has happened as yet. That is the first test of the series was drawn as it was this time. The second test of the series, this was at Trent Bridge this time. The second of the series at Lords, India won. It so happened that I was watching it at Lords at that point. And after that, that week's national interest celebrated the arrival of this new aggressive India, which could beat any team overseas. And lo and behold, we lost the next 3 test matches, including 2 by an innings and a lot. So that's got me chastened. That's the reason I'm not celebrating that one Lord's victory. I hope this time we break that jinx, and this time we win the series comfortably. It's a good time for India to win the series, but let's not celebrate right now. There are 3 more tests to go. Last time also India was unlucky because the bowler who did very well at Lords then it suddenly got injured. Ishant Sharma, then Shami got injured. India had to bring in Pankaj Singh from elsewhere. So the attack was weak and somehow the team collapsed. Now India has a big bench strength in fast bowling. India can now produce 4 frontline fast bowlers anytime, still have 2 on the bench with the squad and have a couple at home in India also on the bench. So India now has this incredible depth in pace bowling that was unimaginable. So on this, my colleague Nikhil Rampal, who's a data journalist, is figuring out some data and he'll soon be doing quite an interesting story showing how Indian cricket has moved from being spin dominated to being batting dominated to being bowling dominated to being pace bowling dominated. That is the big change. So you wait for that story. I will just quote some data from the tweets that have been put out by Mohandas Menon, or Mohan Statsman as his Twitter handle goes. He is India's finest, among India's finest sports statisticians ever. And he points out to us that in all the test matches played overseas since 2018 was a series in South Africa. First of all, India has played all its test matches overseas since 2018 in what is called as SENA countries. That is South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia. Those are the countries where it's toughest for outside teams to perform in. So these are not countries in Asia, not Sri Lanka, not Pakistan, not Bangladesh. So since 2018, India has taken 387 wickets in its away test matches, all in SENA countries, SENA countries. Of these 387 wickets, 300, hold your breath, 300 have been taken by fast bowlers, 87 by spinners. That's a ratio of 78:22. 78% have been taken by pacemen, 22% by spinners. That for India is a big shift. And you can imagine how important this is. Also see how those wickets have come. The 300 wickets taken by pace by Indian fast bowlers have been taken at an average of 24.83 runs per wicket, strike rate of 50 balls, that means every 50 balls delivered you get 1 wicket, and there are 13 5-wicket hauls by pace bowlers in these 2.5 years. Spin on the other hand has 87 wickets Average is 30.29, that is 30.29 runs conceded per wicket. Strike rate is 69.7, that's almost 70 balls to a wicket. And how many 5-wicket hauls? 1 5-wicket haul. This is not so much a reflection on the quality of spinners India has. That tells us how the power has now shifted to Indian pace and how good Indian pace is. He also, if I read the stuff he's put out, and I'm too tempted, I'm too sort of interested in this not to mention it. So he also mentions that the two things that really turned the things for India in crucial test matches. One at Brisbane in Australia, which made India win that series, and second now at Lords, is lower order partnerships by tailenders. So Brisbane, it was Washington Sundar and Shardul Thakur, partnership of 123, completely unexpected out of the blue for 7th wicket. That turned the match and India won the match. At Lords, the partnership of 89, unbroken between Bumrah, Jasprit Bumrah and Mohammad Shami. So once again, something that India never used to do outside, which is to see its tailenders batting out long periods and scoring a lot of runs, has also begun to happen. It just so happens that 3 of these 4 that we have listed in these two partnerships also happen to be among these magnificent fast bowlers that India has now.